Thank you for staying with us on the conversation. Now, a 1-month-old baby girl in the Gambia has died after being taken to a hospital in Banjul with severe bleeding in what was suspected to be a case of female genital mutilation. Now, she was declared dead on arrival, and 2 women have been arrested. Activists and rights groups have condemned the incident, calling it a brutal violation of human rights. Now, let's also note that FGM, that's female genital mutilation, has been banned in the Gambia since 2015, but remains common, with about 75% of women aged 15 to 49 affected. Last year alone, lawmakers rejected an attempt to overturn the ban. The baby's death has reignited calls for stronger enforcement of the law and greater efforts to protect girls from this horrible practice. This evening, I'm joined by Jaha Dukureh. She's founder Safe Hands for Girls in Banjul, Gambia. Thank you so much, Jaha, for your time and for speaking to us on this.
No, thank you very much for having me.
It's a pleasure. Jaha, speak to us. Tell us, this is quite a disheartening incident. Tell us what actually happened, what went wrong, how has this tragedy been able to, galvanize a long overdue shift in public attitude towards female genital mutilation in the Gambia?
Well, first of all, we don't have all the details yet, aside from what the Gambia Police Force has released. But this tragedy is not just about the death of a 1-month-old baby. It's about a loss that was preventable. And to me, watching more than 10 years of work that I have dedicated my life to and seeing how that progress is being rolled back on a daily basis, I think happens to be one of the most heartbreaking things to watch. I lost my baby sister, who was 1 week old, to female genital mutilation. And that's where the passion for this work and this campaign started. And as many people know, this is the work that I am known for. I founded Safe Hands for Girls. And FGM is not a culture, it's not a religion, it's a violence. And in the Gambia, we have a law. This is a law, like you said, that was passed in 2015.
Yeah.
So what just happened to this baby girl, no girl should have to go through this. And it's time that we stop using culture and religion to justify killing innocent children.
Now, we're told that 2 women, have actually been arrested in this case. Is arresting those women even enough, or do we need to change something much more bigger?
I think something much more bigger needs to change, because when people believe that something is their cultural and religious right, it takes social norms change for you to see progress. We can have beautiful laws on paper, but if communities are not ready to abandon this practice, progress is going to be very, very slow. So that's why the policy work is very, very much needed. But what's even more needed is the grassroots work at the community level. The problem that we are facing in the Gambia, I'm going to be very honest and transparent with you, because I've spent nearly 15 years doing this work and I've learned a lot along the progress. There's a lot of mistrust when it comes to activists, the feminist movement in total, wherein the religious leaders as well as traditional leaders in communities claim that a lot of us are sent by the West to tell them that their culture is bad, and we are not the right messengers, because if they don't believe what we are saying, I think in a case like the Gambia, what's happening right now, we need the government to do an autopsy and then release that autopsy result and tell communities why this baby died and how this baby died. We need to start presenting people with facts. We need to start presenting them with evidence, For years, they've been asking us for evidence, and we can get that evidence through government support. I am very proud of the Gambia police force and the stance that they have taken. I think we do need to set examples, but it would take more than arresting people. If anything, I feel that a lot of the proponents of FGM, the more you arrest someone, the bolder they get. Looking at comments on Facebook, seeing what people are typing, that we will still continue practicing FGM. So it means that education still needs to happen. Awareness needs to be raised. Government needs to work with civil society hand in hand. No one can do it alone.
Okay, I was actually about to ask, what the biggest barriers to justice is in this particular case, and what would real enforcement look like? But you just answered my question. But beyond law enforcement, how can we shift, social norms, especially in rural areas where female genital mutilation prevalence still hits 90 to 95%. Reports actually have it that in Basse region, there's a lot of FGM going on.
I am from that
region. Oh, you
region.
are? Yes. So what can be done to make this practice socially a taboo?
I mean, see, I had promised myself to stay away from the FGM campaign, mainly because of the negativity. But what needs to happen is all of us that deeply care about this issue, we need to sit with ourselves and take a stock of where we have won and where we have failed, and be very, very honest about that, and go back to the drawing board and see what's going to work. I personally don't believe us continuing to do just the usual FGM awareness campaigns, radio campaigns, conferences, workshops. I don't believe that's the solution. I think we need to have holistic projects in communities that look at women's economic empowerment, that look at the whole woman and how a community can thrive, to build trust, so that when we speak about the dangers of this practice, communities understand that we are not just there to tell them there's something wrong with their culture, but we are there to actually impact change in a very, very meaningful way.
Okay. Now, what about the sanctions here? Because the Gambian law imposes up to 3 years in prison or even fines for performing FGM, with harsher penalties if it leads to death. Now, looking at the outcome of this case, do you think that these sanctions are even sufficient deterrents?
No, I don't think so, because we have some of the most powerful religious leaders in this country that are going on radio, going on TV, and publicly threatening activists, calling us names, saying that people should boycott our businesses, they should boycott our weddings and cut ties with us. And nothing happens to them when they make those threats against us. So at the end of the day, there's a lot of people in this country that still believe that FGM should be practiced. So whether we have a law or a death penalty, I don't think it's ever going to be enough to stop communities from practicing FGM until they themselves decide that they know that this practice is wrong. And the way we get that is through evidence. We need to give evidence, we need to put it in their face, and we need to be bold, just as the people that are working against us are. We need to figure out who's funding them. And this is not just about FGM. When you look at the whole women's rights movement, decades of progress is being rolled back everywhere, from child marriage to sexual violence. And, at some point, as someone who cares, you ask yourself, is it really worth it?
Okay. In 2024, Parliament suspended an attempt to repeal the ban after heavy pushback. You talked about the government not believing what you people say and also requesting for evidence. Proposals have also linked, repealing the ban to preserving cultural or religious identity. So how can your policy makers reconcile respect for cultural beliefs with protecting children's rights?
So not the government does not believe us. Our biggest challenge in this country is religious leaders. There are some religious leaders, men, that claim that FGM is a good practice and it's a religious practice. They use Islam to justify it. And they do everything they can to discredit people like me. And that has been the biggest obstacle that we have faced. And as a result of that, they've turned us into outsiders within our own communities. And it's not an easy battle. And I want to be very, very honest about that. Even though last year we fought hard and we won at the end of the day, but what did we really win when a 1-month-old baby just died? And the reason that's in the news is because we know about it, but how many other children have we lost that we don't ever hear about, that the parents decide they don't want to report? And no one, if this was another hospital in Basse, for instance, it would never be out. They would never admit it. The hospital staff will help them cover it up. If it was in another community where FGM is prevalent, and we need to understand that the police that we are reporting to, some of them do believe in this practice. The medical doctor that is seeing the patient, some of them are proponents of this practice.
We also hear that, in those rural and traditional communities, FGM is also tied to notions of purity, rite of passage, and just as you've said, religious duty as well. But then we've seen survivors and activists, use their personal stories to change minds. So are there stories that have actually shifted that belief or even that narrative? And will stories like this continue to do that?
I don't know if it's necessarily stories like this. I do believe that media is very powerful. When I first started speaking out against about my own experience of going through FGM, I come from a tribe where not only do we go through type 3 FGM, but usually the private part is sealed so that you can only have sex when you get married.
Sorry, I'm so sorry, because I actually saw that type 1, type 2, type 3. Can you just briefly explain to us what these types are?
I'm not sure how vivid I can go because this is TV. I can.
Sorry, come again.
Am I allowed to explain, because this is a TV?
Yeah. Just briefly, and
so
if you can.
Type 1 FGM is where the partial or total clitoris is removed, and then type 2 is the partial or total removal of the clitoris as well as the labia. Okay. And then with type 3 is when the vagina is sealed using your own tissue, or sometimes it's shown shut using needles or thorns. And in the Gambia, even though religious leaders claim that we only practice type 1 FGM, that's not true. I went through type 3 FGM. And many people in the Gambia actually do go through either type 2 or type 3 FGM.
It's quite sad indeed. All right, well, just before we wrap up, we realize that men are actually often left out of this conversation. So what responsibility and influence do fathers, brothers, and even male leaders have here?
I mean, not in the case of the Gambia. In the case of the Gambia, the men are the ones that are the biggest proponents of FGM, and they're the ones that are actually leading the conversation, saying that FGM should continue. Men have a role, and because a lot of times in the Gambia, because of how our societal structures are set up, fathers are the leaders of households, and especially young men. They should understand that what directly impacts us as women indirectly impacts them as men, and we are not their enemies. We are not here because we hate our culture. I love the Gambia more than anything else, but I have seen what this practice does to people. And it's time that we are honest with ourselves, and it's time that we listen to survivors. And it's not right. What's happening, there's so much that's wrong with it.
Well, we sincerely hope that, the government steps up and also international organizations, step in and try to see an end to FGM in the Gambia. Sadly, this is where we actually have to wrap up. I wish we had more time, Jaha, but thank you so much for speaking to us and educating us on this. Jaha Dukureh, she's founder Safe Hands for Girls in Banjul, Gambia. Thank you once again.
Thank you very much.